Miami Condo Mondays is a live podcast on the first workday of the week at 4 p.m. South Florida time. The program features former journalist and current Wall Street consultant Peter Zaleski of the Miami Condo Investing Club and former lender and veteran condo broker Jenny Huertas of CVRRealty.com. Recorded weekly in greater downtown Miami, this one-hour discussion will provide a refreshing and sometimes controversial perspective on the state of the South Florida condo market from a pair of seasoned real estate professionals who do not always agree. The program won't tell you what to think about the South Florida condo market, but will give you something to think about before buying, selling, taking listings, or financing units. This podcast is not authorized by the Miami real estate industry and will quite possibly annoy many of its figureheads. Welcome to this week's episode of Miami Condo Mondays, broadcast live on the social media accounts of Peter Zaleski and Jenny Huertas. Happy Monday, Miami. This is Peter Zaleski. I'm a condo consultant. I'm also the founder of the Miami Condo Investing Club. Check out my website, miamicondo.club. If you're watching this podcast live, that means it is Monday. It's also time for Miami Condo Mondays. This is a one-hour presentation that we do every Monday to start off the week talking about the condo market in the South Florida area, Miami-Dade, Broward, Palm Beach County. I normally do it with my co-host, Jenny Huertas of CVR Realty. She's my partner. Check out her website, cvrrealty.com. Jenny's traveling right now, so she's not here this week, but I'm going to try to go it alone. What are we talking about today? We're talking about a brand new report that just came out from the Miami Association of Realtors. Miami Association of Realtors, if you do not know, it's a local organization. It's got close to 60,000 members. You heard me right, 60,000 members. In order to join the Realtor Association, you need to have a realtor license, or real estate license, I should say. What you do, you then you sign up for the association, and you become a club member. Tends to be a little confusion here and there about a realtor versus a real estate agent. Generally speaking, a realtor is a member of a club, just like somebody joins a country club because they want to play the golf course, or somebody joins a sailing club because they want to be able to go ahead and dock their boat at the marina. So if you join the Realtor Association, you get access to all their education, all their support services. We also get access primarily to the multiple listing service. Multiple listing service is a database put together by members of the association, i.e. the club, and that's where they share a lot of information about what's available, what's for sale, what's on the market, gives you statistics, gives you a whole variety of things. It's kind of the simple way to be able to track the real estate market. It's not by all means complete. Why? Because a lot of transactions might occur that they never make it into the multiple listing service. Multiple listing service, again, a database for members of the club who have real estate licenses who are going to get compensated in theory to go ahead and represent one side of the deal or the other. You have the buy side, you have the sell side. The place that they kind of move it all is called the MLS. So now that you have an understanding of it, if you didn't know, let's go ahead and get into this brand new report talking about foreign buyers, international buyers, foreign investment, all related to residential. And what we're going to be talking about for this particular report, it's a report that came out on July the 21st, 2025. And that report, let me tell you the exact name. I have it right here in front of me. I'm going to speak correctly. It's called the Miami New Construction Global Sales Report. 17-page report came out, and what it is it's tracking pre-construction condo units. What are the sales, where the buyer's coming from, all in everything in between. Now, I should tell you when we get into pre-construction, just so you have a clue, pre-construction data you cannot rely on. It is not justifiable. It's not dependable. It's not bankable. What it is primarily it's a survey. Why? Because when you go ahead and you buy a pre-construction condo tower, what you're really doing is you're signing a contract that's agreeing to in which you're agreeing to buy a unit sometime in the future once the building is built for a set price. And when you go ahead and you buy one of these pre-construction condo units, really what you're doing is you're exercising or you're entering into what I would call, and I'm not a lawyer, I'm also not, I don't have a Series 7 broker-dealer license, nothing like that, but looking at it from a layman's perspective, you're entering into a futures contract. So if you think pricing in the future, say 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now, is going to be higher than the price you're being offered today on one of these condo units, you go ahead and you sign up. You buy that unit, and along the way, you're going to be putting down deposits based on certain milestones. Typically, you put down a deposit when you sign the contract. When the contract goes hard after a rescission period, you come up with more money. Typically, when a project breaks ground, means they do the ceremony, they put out the booze and the food, and everybody gets together. They take a bunch of pictures. Everybody's dressed up. You're on a construction site. They hand out shovels. They have these nice posh construction hard hats. They throw some dirt, and lo and behold, they have broken ground. It's ceremonial. Now, when they break ground, you typically, as a buyer, you have to put up more money. When they hit a certain floor of construction, you come up with additional cash. The way it kind of works right now is that you have to put up about 50% deposit, and then the other 50% is due when the unit is available, when it's going to be livable, when you can actually move into the unit. That's the way it works right now today. So 50% is primarily the way it's played, but it wasn't always that way. Prior to the Great Recession, the way that they sold pre-construction condo towers in South Florida and in Miami and other places around was to only collect a 20% deposit. And what happened? Well, by the time a lot of the units were ultimately delivered, remember, it takes about 3 years or so to construct one of these towers, one of these high-rises. By the time that the units were actually delivered, the market had changed and the contracted purchase prices were less. It costs less to buy once the unit was delivered than actually what these people had entered into contracts to purchase the units for. So what happened? Many buyers simply walked. They walked on their deposit. A certain portion was allocated and put into an escrow account. Some people sued to try to get that money back. Some were successful, some were not. How do I know that, or why don't I know that? Because many of the developers, if they went ahead and they entered into a settlement agreement after a lawsuit was filed, they simply signed a non-disclosure. And that non-disclosure basically shut down, silenced, and censored all the information, so much of it never actually surfaced. So we never got to see the real details. There was all kinds of talk about, well, this happened, that happened, this happened, but nobody really knows because nothing was actually recorded, at least as far as that I'm familiar and aware of. Now, I will tell you, when we went through our Great Recession, nobody wanted to buy pre-construction, and bankers did not want to finance new construction. Why? Because so many institutions had gotten hit hard during the Great Recession. So a group out of Argentina called the Mello Group, and I've done consulting for them for just for disclosure purposes. So the Mello Group came forward. They introduced a model that said, you know what, instead of 20% deposit, which was the go-to prior to the Great Recession, we're going to do it the same way we did it in Argentina, which was to collect a 50% deposit, 50, opposed to what was originally 20% deposit. And the Miller Group, when they were selling the units, they sold to people down in Argentina and South America who were much more familiar and used to this 50% deposit. As a result of that, the first project to go up was called 23 Biscayne Bay. They did not necessarily get the traditional type of financing. They were able to effectively build a project using buyer deposits. So that changed everything. And that was about 2011 or so. I still remember going to their pre-sale launch party. It was held over in Coral Gables in a design store called Artefacto. Went there, got to meet the Mellos, you know, it was a fantastic experience, but they basically changed the market, and here we are today, 50% deposits, although some buildings we're hearing and some developers we're hearing are starting to actually ask for less deposits. Why they're doing that? Well, part of it might be the fact that they've sold quite a bit and they feel as if they're ready to get rocking and rolling, and they just need a couple more to push it over the edge so they can go ahead and get construction financing. Because remember, when banks finance these pre-construction condo towers, they're looking for certain ratios. They want to know if the contracts are real, they want to know if the money is up, and then the bank will actually take a chance on it. Increasingly, it's private money that's doing the financing. These large hedge funds or other types of groups that are non-traditional banks. So in other words, if you work in one of the offices, they're not going to have that FDIC logo that you see when you walk into a bank. So these private sector groups or these unconventional groups are basically doing the financing. They need certain requirements in order to go ahead and provide financing, and they want to basically run the numbers, which, it actually could be a good little tidbit for you. If you're looking at pre-construction and you don't know, is this a good project? Is it not a good project? One way to sort of suss it out and see if the project's actually going to go forward and deliver as proposed and as promised is to see if they have any kind of financing. Typically, when financing is done, that means a third party's had an opportunity to underwrite the project, take a look at the numbers, take a look at the project, and if it passes that lender's sniff test, then you as a buyer should have a little bit more confidence. Now, if financing is not in place, I would say you really need to sort of be skeptical. You got to wonder, you got to question, is this project going to get over the finish line? Is it going to be completed? Is it not going to be completed? Now, some other tidbits I can sort of suggest to you that I've seen over the years, and I've been covering, writing, watching, playing in the South Florida condo market since the 90s, the early to mid 90s when I first got involved with it, so 30 plus years or so. So I'm going to share a little bit of insight that I have. If you're looking at a pre-construction condo project, an important question to ask is, has that developer built in South Florida before? Now, they might have built elsewhere, but have they actually built in South Florida, in Miami-Dade, in Broward County, in Palm Beach County? And I would tell you, if they have not built here before, chances are their first project is going to be a struggle. Typically, the first project, there's all kinds of mishaps, all kinds of design issues. The developer and the architect, they had this vision because of the way they did it back in their home city or home country was done a little bit differently, but now suddenly they're playing in Miami and the game's completely different. So if you are looking at pre-construction, I would tell you or suggest to you, ask the developer or ask the salespeople you're talking to when you're at that sales office, ask them, has this developer built in South Florida before? Now, if they haven't, expect that the project's probably going to be late. It's probably going to have a bunch of inefficiencies. And also, too, you're not going to know what the quality of it is until it's actually online. And this kind of goes back to one of my ways I suggest that if you're looking at playing the pre-construction condo game, it's really comparable to a horse race. Now, many of you probably have not been to a horse track. You're probably not degenerate gamblers. I'm not a degenerate gambler, but I've known some people who've written about horse tracks and horse racing and stuff like that. So, I kind of compare what goes on in the horse gambling world versus what's going on in the pre-construction condo world. And they're both a gamble. You don't know if that project is actually going to get delivered as promised, and if it's going to have every single thing that salesperson told you about when you were first getting wined and dined and sucking down that free booze and eating all those free hors d'oeuvres while the music was blasting and everybody was making you feel special. So here's the way I compare pre-construction to the horse track. When you go to the horse track, there's basically three ways you can bet, generally speaking. And this comes from experience, and this also comes from knowing people who've written about it and who basically were degenerate gamblers. And the way you bet at the horse track is one of three ways. One is, I like the horse. Oh, look at how beautiful the horse is. This horse looks great. Look at how the sun glistens off of its profile shot, all that type of stuff. So you got the horse. It looks good, and therefore I want it. Number two is, it's my lucky number. There's 10 horses running, 12 horses running, 13, 8, whatever it is, and that's my lucky number, so I always bet my lucky number and I'm going to win. Just like the people who play the lotto, or they play the quick pick. They bet the lucky numbers. And then finally, the third way is jockey. Who's the jockey, and does the jockey have a track record? Does the jockey win on this particular turf, at this particular course? And the way I compare that to a pre-construction condo project is, has the developer done it before? Have they done enough projects to know where the pitfalls are, where the opportunities are, and how they can actually get it over the finish line and deliver as promised? So I would tell you, if you're looking at pre-construction, it's first and foremost important to bet on a jockey, i.e. a developer, who actually knows what the hell they're doing. So that's a critical part if you are going to look at pre-construction. And that's a little history about how pre-construction here works in South Florida. Let me just grab a little sip of my iced tea. There we go. So now that you understand what the pre-construction game is, 50% deposit, generally speaking. Oh, by the way, another tidbit to that, if you want to know how the market is going, ask the salesperson or ask your realtor, if you're working with a realtor, ask what the commission is. The commission on pre-construction is traditionally 5% on new product. If it's a resale, it's typically 3%. Everything is negotiable. A little bit over a year ago or so, there was a settlement by the National Association of Realtors with a group that had sued. It was an antitrust suit related to who pays commission, stuff like that. But generally speaking, 3% for a resale, 5% for new construction. So when you're looking at a new construction project, one good question to ask if you're going in on your own and or if you have a realtor is, what kind of commission is being paid out to the buy-side broker? That'd be the realtor who walks in there with you, gets you to sign something. So Commission should be 5%, but what we're seeing is some projects now, because of lackluster sales, they're offering commissions as high as 7%. So that's about 40% more than the norm. That's a good tell as to whether or not the building's selling. Now, every project will tell you they're 65% sold. The project is sold. We're 65, we're 75% sold. If you don't buy it today, you're not going to have another shot at it. I will tell you across the board, it's probably not true. Why is that? Because not that the agent you're dealing with, not the in-house person, is necessarily misleading you, but chances are the agent who's giving you that information has probably been misled by the developer. How and why would I suggest that? Well, because I walk into pre-construction sales offices, and a lot of the in-house people who are selling the product, they've asked me, what percentage of our building is actually sold? And they don't know. Why? Because when you sell pre-construction, you sell it based on tranches. You don't sell out an entire building. If it's 300 units, you're not putting all 300 units on sale at the same time. You're going to sell it in steps, in steps, in steps. Typically, the first 25% is the friends and family. That'll be the units that come up on the market and have the best price. Why? Because buyers are coming in first. And because they're coming in first, therefore, they're taking a chance and their risk is the greatest. Compared to almost like venture capital funding. You know, there's a startup maybe out of Silicon Valley. We've all seen that HBO series, Silicon Valley. And if you haven't seen it, go check it out. It's about how startup companies are created. And typically the first money coming in is called the angel investor. They're the ones who are there to save the day and guide the business owner kind of through it. Same thing with the developer. First round, 25% or so is going to be the pre-sales. They're not necessarily going to be the best units, but they will be. It will be enough sales that they can put them all on the board to go ahead and justify a price increase. And it's every developer will do it differently. Some of them raise pricing every 10%. So 25% raise price. 35% raise price, 45%, and so on and so forth until they get to the point where they might qualify for financing. And once they have the financing, that will help them get over the hump. It'll help them bridge where they are starting from the pre-construction game. Remember, booze, pretty people, food, and make you feel special to suddenly put a shovel in the ground. So that's an important part to keep in mind. And then they sell them in tranches. They're not going to sell the whole building out because what would happen? All the oceanfront would sell and nothing else would sell. And therefore you'd have half a building sold out and the other half would not be sold out. And that would create all kinds of problems for the developer because typically the better view is going to charge more than those units that have the inferior view. And as a tidbit, I will tell you, if you are buying into a condo project, typically the worse view, the better the deal is from an investor perspective. Somebody's looking to make money or generate cash every month. That's going to not only cover their monthly bill, but also potentially put some money in their pocket. Why? Because people overpay for the best views, and as a result, the worst views, the inferior views, the mediocre views are going to have to be discounted or not price at the same level. We've done studies in the past. I don't know what the current rate is, but basically like oceanfront versus non-oceanfront could be somewhere in the ballpark, 150, 200 bucks a square foot difference. And if you're simply buying it to rent it out, the difference that you're going to spend, but that extra 150, 200 bucks a foot, it's not going to be made up in rent versus a unit on the other side of the hallway, which is basically facing the city versus facing the ocean. So little tidbit to sort of keep in mind. Something to factor in. Now, if you are going after pre-construction and it's a new developer, somebody's never built here before, maybe they got a track record overseas, they've had some success overseas, but they haven't built here before, what do you kind of look for? Well, I would tell you, some people will wait. They'll wait until the building comes online, and you say, well, yeah, but Peter, if I wait, then the price is going to be much higher. Yes, the price would be more likely than not be much higher unless we get a pullback in the overall condo market, which is what we are anticipating, we are predicting, we are projecting. But let's say we're wrong. Let's say there's not a pullback in pricing. The premium you'll pay to buy once the project actually comes online, it might actually be your advantage, because what happens if that tower comes online and it's underimproved? What happens if it's not exactly what you thought it was going to be? There was a project that was put up in Greater Downtown Miami on Biscayne Boulevard project, which is now called the Biscayne. Originally it was going to be called Everglades on the Bay. It was a pre-construction party that was held. It was the first big condo tower that the developer was putting out. Lo and behold, we had Hurricane Katrina hit way back in the day, 20 years ago or so. Katrina hits as a result, and Simultaneously, we got a construction boom going on. As a result, material costs go up tremendously, much like you're seeing today with these tariffs that are being thrown around under the Liberation Day strategy of President Donald Trump. So going back 20 years ago when they're putting up Everglades on the Bay, and at the time they spent like $1 million on the launch party and everything involved with it because they wanted to really wow everybody because this was this developer's first go at it. So project is ultimately being constructed. Unfortunately, the developer dies. It has to be replaced. Other things have to happen in order to pull the project off. And what happens? Because of cost, the decision was made, and I was told by the architect involved with the project that they decided to take what should have been floor-to-ceiling windows and replace them with what I would compare to probably chintzy apartment tower rental types of windows. So effectively, if you walk into a unit at the Everglades on the Bay, which is now called Biscayne, it was sold off in bulk. A significant portion, north of 600 units, was sold to one buyer because they couldn't sell the one-off units. So what happened? In order to get the building done and to try to make some kind of profit, the developer made the decision. The replacement developer, same group but a different point person because the original point person had died, made a decision, let's go ahead and save money on the glass. The cost of glass down here because of hurricanes, because of Hurricane Andrew, because of insurance and so much more, they made the decision to remove floor-to-ceiling windows where, you know, from your foot all the way over your head would have been windows. When you walk in a unit, you can see that spectacular view at between 2nd and 3rd Street on Biscayne Boulevard in greater downtown Miami, overlooking Bayside, overlooking the Port of Miami, overlooking Fisher Island, overlooking the MacArthur Causeway, overlooking South Beach. And they suddenly swapped out those windows for small little windows that you would find in an apartment building, probably located out west in a place that I call Kendallandia.